When I was about 23, I was sort of trying to find my place in the world, both as a writer and as a person. And I was thinking about my family and thinking about sort of what I wanted to do with my life. And I was talking to my dad on the phone one day, and I said, would you possibly want to send me to New York and let me interview my grandmother and get all of these great stories down that we've all been hearing all these years? And maybe give me a couple $100 so I can eat too. And he nicely agreed to do that. So I came to New York and I spent, I think it's a couple of weeks, and we sat there with the photo albums and we pulled all the boxes down from the high shelves and looked at the passports and stamped documents and everything. And I got all the stories down and I was very excited. And I went home to Berkeley, California, where I was living at the time, and thought, I'm rich. This is great. Got amazing material. I'm going to write a novel. And I took Fridays off work and got started, and it proved to be a little bit harder than I had expected. It was not very good because I was just writing versions of my grandmother's stories that she was much better at telling than I was. So I gave up. I thought, it's not going to work. I'm quitting this thing. And I put it down for about 2 years and wrote some short stories in the meantime. And then it kept kind of nudging at me, and I felt like there's something to this. I have to write it. Even if nothing good ever comes of it, I have to write it for my own self. And I started again, and this time I didn't pick up any of those notes. I just sort of tried to imagine my way in and feel like these were characters who did belong to me and who were part of my family even though I hadn't met them. So I started that way, and it was all out of my own brain, basically. So finally, much later, that draft also wasn't very good, but 17 drafts later, it's a little bit more sensible. So I'm going to read from the section. The book opens at the beginning of World War II in a tiny little village in northern Romania, where it's a little Jewish village, and they have realized that they're completely stuck. There's nowhere to go. The war is starting. There's no escape. So they decide, instead of just dying, they're going to reinvent the world. And nothing else exists. There's no history. There's nowhere else. Just their little peninsula on the crook of this river. So I'm going to read to you from a few pages of the very first day of the new world. The sun broke through the clouds and rolled up over us like it knew the whole plan. Rain continued and an arc of color spread across our sky. We voted to keep living in the houses we had already built and to keep being married to the people we were married to. There were those who protested this, who proposed we gather in the square and pair off anew, tallest to shortest. There were those who thought it would be better to put the stupid with the smart to even things out, and those who thought we should try to put the smart with the smart and hope for true genius. But I love my wife, my father said. How do you know? Today's the first day. You've never seen her before today. What if you hate her by tonight? The banker asked. My father regarded my mother's mossy brown eyes. I have a feeling, he said, a very strong feeling. He winked. The chicken farmer argued that we woke up in the morning and this is how it was. We were born into the world in pairs. This convinced us. Only 2 people decided otherwise. With a nod, the barber's wife and the sheep shearer's wife traded husbands. They patted on the back the ones they had come with and said, nothing personal, sweetness. Just better this way. Those 2 wives shook hands with each other as they traded positions, stood now with men they hoped to love better, longer. The men were a little wide-eyed, a little heartbroken to be abandoned this way, and a little thrilled to be taken up by these new, unexplored bosoms. What about God? My brother Moshe asked. Is he the same? I thought about God's view down on the stranger's village, the Romanian soldiers unsheathing their knives and reloading their guns. Had he seen all of that? Had he always known that he would not stop it? We glanced around, quiet, listening. We just arrived here, right? The world just started, Igor said. Maybe he told us exactly what to do. I didn't hear anything, my brother said, and my father patted him on the head. I began to wonder if God would be angry with us for doing away with his creation and starting again. I suggested we write a letter in explanation and ask for his blessing. Dear God. We did not start again because it wasn't beautiful before. The world we make will be much smaller and less glorious than the one you made. Ours will have none of the strange wild animals, no elephants or tigers, no parrots or blue frogs. It will have none of the exotic spices, no sea, no lakes. We are content to accept this small circle of land as our entire universe, so long as we are safe here. I was worried we weren't offering anything. What would God want from us? To prove our love, I asked. The butcher suggested sacrificing a goat. The banker suggested charity. I thought maybe God was simply lonely, by himself for all of eternity at the top of the sky. Maybe he just wants to be told a good story, I said, and that is what we promised to give him. If we were going to have a God, then we were going to need a temple for him, the greatest temple ever built. The shape of that place, the glory of it, kept us talking for hours. So that the room would be flooded with the very first light of day, huge windows would face east, and others west, because the day's end is sometimes even more spectacular than its beginning. My sister wanted to have a small pool to throw things into. The healer wanted to have a hole in the roof to leave a way in for the dead. The two oldest men wanted to cover the floor in soft feathers so we could pray lying down. The second thing God did after inventing the earth was to invent the heavens. We had made the earth, and now we would make the sky. We would paint constellations on the ceiling of the temple, white against a background of blackest blue. The temple rose high above us, a misty vision so sparkling and grand we felt drunk. How could our God not fall in love with us? It sounds handsome, my mother said, gold and all that, but the world started again because we wanted a safer place, a more deliberate place. How do we make sure we don't forget that? How do we keep track of the story? Wasn't that going to be our big offering? Several people sulked. They were having fun sculpting great ivory balustrades, and now they had to deal with the microscopic machinery of meaning. The mist of the temple dispersed, and the room became quiet. The chicken farmer figured we could write down the things we did each day. The jeweler pointed out that we might end up with a very complete accounting of the minutiae without ever knowing what happened in the bigger sense. Laundry would be on record, but not faith. Igor thought we should interview each other. I wondered if we should gather each week and write the story of what had taken place. We write down everyone's prayers, the stranger said. Someone listens. We might miss some of the events, the banker said. Well, I vote that this world is more about hopes than events, my mother breathed, and so it would be. We voted to build a comfortable chair and a desk for the reporter to sit at, and we agreed that one of us would be there to listen, quietly writing down every prayer each of us uttered. There would be no interruption, no answers or questions. And what if we pray when we are in our kitchens or walking in the snow, we wondered? We should listen to one another even then. If you hear a prayer, write it down and take it to the temple. We can have a box to put them in. I think we need all the languages, I said, thinking of the Russian my father sometimes spoke, the German the butcher carried on in, the Spanish, the Yiddish, the Italian, the Romanian, the Hebrew. If praying is how we keep track, we should have a lot of words to wish with. As long as we forget where they came from, the stranger said. I promised that I already had. Do we need protections, my brother asked? Do we need a wall or a shield? No, I corrected. We are the only thing that exists, us and God. We were tired by the time it grew dark. It was our first day and we had done a lot. But we had not thought ahead to this moment when the sky turned purple and we were hungry and wanted sleep. Should we stay together in the healer's house? Should we go back to the houses we had been born owning? Some decided to sleep outside in the drizzle, curled up in the bright cold. Others wanted to sleep better, to have a feather pillow and a wall keeping the bugs out. The ones who had been born with loves wanted to love, to make use of their skin and fingers, to celebrate their good fortune at being alive in this historic moment, at being the first of our kind, at being warm and leggy and full of good ideas.